Welcome back to Uncovered. This week we are coming to you with another listener request, which I'm super excited about. And I'm joined by, I guess we can say, our resident counsellor, Mon. Welcome back to Uncovered, Mon.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited about this topic.
Oh, I know. When I sent it to her, she's like, yes. I actually sent her two. And then I'm like, if you can't cover these, I would love a recommendation. And then I'm like, oh, look, I'll go to this person with this recommendation. She's like, no, I've already started researching.
Fear's mine.
Fear is mine. So if you haven't listened to an episode with Mum before, she has been on with us twice and she helped us uncover Clicks, which is episode 38, which was, that one got a lot of traction. That one was very popular. Actually, these are both really popular. But the other one we did was pole identity, which is episode 62. So if you haven't listened, I highly recommend going back and listening to them after this one. You can stay here for now because you're already here.
This one's going to be just as good.
It's going to be just as good. So you might as well just stay here and then go back and listen to 62 and 38. And even if you've listened to them before, a nice little reminder because they're great topics. So today, our topic is fear. So fear from a point of mental blocks, tricks, and I mean, when I was talking to Mon, it can go so much deeper, right? But I just wanted to share before we dive in what the request actually was from our listener. So the request was, do we have any plans on uncovering fear? The mental blocks we end up with as we progress through pole dancing. I fell once when I had my arm above my head, and now I go into panic mode when I get myself into anything similar, and it's really holding me back from progressing. I think it's something we all struggle with, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and tips. Thanks. So I think this one's really good because I've had this exact experience.
So have I.
Yeah, and it took me 18 months to retrain the trick. So, so I guess probably a really good place to start is, what exactly is fear and where does it come from?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess there's two things in that listener request that really stood out to me is just, I guess, the general idea of fear and how that, I guess, impacts us in our goals. But then what's interesting about this one and this listener request is that she's also experiencing what I would call a trauma response. So there's a fear of perceived danger, and then there's a learned response for a danger or something we've been through. So if you've had a major injury, if you've had a major fall or something like that, your body remembers the trauma from that. And whilst your body can recover quickly from injuries or things like that, the mind can take a lot longer to catch up. And there's that kind of trauma response that we need to almost need to retrain our brain the same way we retrain our body.
It's really funny you say that. I last week kicked the piano at home, polling from home, like massive fail. I should not have had a piano so close to my home, but I did. And I kicked it coming out of a handstand. And I've obviously hadn't been able to pole for a week, and I was teaching last night and I was in the exact same mood. And as I came down,
you winced away from the imaginary piano.
Yes. I didn't let my foot come that second foot because my first foot came down and touched, and I did not let that second foot touch the ground until I had control of my area. I was realization. I was like, ooh, that actually impacted me more than I thought. And in all fairness, it's still sore. So
yeah,
maybe I was getting a little bit protected.
Yeah, but the body remembers. The body holds a lot of, I guess, stuff from when we experience trauma. And an injury or a fall is a traumatic event, whether it is significant for you at the time or not so much. Your body and your mind still needs to recover from that. So, but then I guess when I started thinking about fear as a bigger kind of topic, I was looking at, how fear and I guess stress can be really useful and can motivate us and push us forwards. Yeah. And then when does it get to a point where it's unhelpful and holds us back and stops us from progressing? So, because I think a lot of the time, the idea of something being scary can hold us back from starting. So there's even just if you dial it right back to the idea of pole seems like a really scary sport. I'm thinking I want to try, but I'm really nervous. I've never done it before. I don't want to put myself in a vulnerable position. Do I have to wear skimpy clothes. Like that's
Do I have to wear the heel?
Yeah, exactly. That's what if I fall? You've not experienced a fall yet, but there's still the fear around like going upside down or falling from a height or, things like that.
I even find just in a spin, they're really scared of falling, or in a climb. And it's such a simple thing. And I guess that's where you build trust. But what is an example? You said fear can be good. Where's an example where fear is good for you in Pole?
Well, I guess I'm not necessarily talking about fear there. I'm talking about the stress response. So fear comes from the stress response where, like, everyone's heard of the fight or flight response, where your brain perceives a threat or a danger, and then it kicks into gear. And that is a positive response, particularly back in the old days where, you literally had to stand and fight the lion or run from the lion. So you needed that adrenaline, you needed that hit, you needed your body to prepare yourself to fight or flight that danger. And it served us well. But now we have a lot more perceived threats and dangers that are not necessarily a real threat or danger, but something that we can create for ourselves, whether it's a psychological fear or a perceived threat or whatever that is. So I guess in a work sense, for example, having a certain amount of stress or a certain amount of nerves can be really motivating and can keep us motivated. If we have no stress in our lives, then we have nothing pushing us to reach our goals.
Yeah. So I guess it could be like the stress of a competition. I smirk because the conversation we were having before about the things going on in our lives. We're like, just that, like, I just want to do it. I just want to do it now. Like that anxiety. And it is like,
but it's exciting as well.
It's exciting. And I don't know, I hear this a lot, but isn't anxiety and excitement very similar?
Yes. So the response that our body has is very similar. So the heart, the racing heart, the sweating, the adrenaline pumping through your body. That, depending on how you have perceived what has created that response, will depend on whether it's a distressing anxiety type thing or excitement, and that's why when you see, like, the whole term like bridezilla, for example, often there's really stressful stuff that is going on, but there's also this elevated element of excitement and so it's, the two can become very easily kind of
transferable.
It's hard to understand what you're experiencing.
I had this on Monday night. There was a lot going on. I had huge discussions happening on the Uncovered page about the instructor wages, which, stay tuned for that. I definitely have some great podcasts in the works for this one. But there was quite a few other things going on just in my life personally, in the studio, but they were all good things. And so I had that really like nervous energy, excitement. And I wear a Whoop. So a Whoop sort of watches your data, and the next day it tells you what your HRV is, what your recovery was, depending on your sleep. It just does a bunch of analysis. And I found that my recovery was worse the next day because I was technically stressed in some capacities. It was just a lot happening at one point. So I found that really interesting.
And our brains, like the natural human condition of our brains is to perceive things negatively.
Yes.
And we have a lot of anxious, negative thoughts, which aren't necessarily rooted in any kind of fact or reality, but our natural, I guess, tendency to lean towards a negative means that we're much more susceptible to those negative thoughts and to believing that, and our anxiety wants us to fall for that. Do you know what I mean? Your anxiety is always out to trick you. It's always out to make you feel like I can't, or I'm not good enough, or, something bad is going to happen. And I think it's being able to, I guess, recognize and acknowledge that this is an anxious thought, not a thought that's necessarily based in reality. And that's how it kind of plays into the whole fear thing, because a lot of the time we develop these fears and these phobias around things that aren't necessarily even an actual threat or danger. So like, for example, a fear of flying.
Yes.
Heaps of people have this phobia and this fear of flying, but the actual real danger or threat is very minimal.
Yeah, it's like the safest form of travel.
It is the safest form of travel. But it doesn't matter how many times you tell someone that, when they are experiencing a fear response in their body, that is what they're focusing on, and that is what their anxiety starts to feed.
Yeah. And I guess it's so much harder when this anxiety kicks in when you're upside down.
Sorry about that.
Mine's just breaking my mobile podcast studio right now.
I'm so excited. My arms are going everywhere.
I know. I can feel the energy. You're very excited about
because this is something that I have actually experienced myself, and it wasn't actually about a specific trick in general, but for me, it was the idea of coming back to pole. Created so much anxiety for me for something that used to give me so much passion, so much excitement. It was my calm place, my happy place. I loved being here. After I had all my injuries, the idea of stepping back into a pole studio caused me so much anxiety and avoidance. And it wasn't even the act of pole. I had created so much anxiety that it was anything associated with pole started bringing up those feelings of anxiety, you know. So even stepping into a pole studio or, you know, going to a pole comp to support my friends or seeing things on social media was bringing up this like anxious kind of feeling of like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm going to get re-injured. I'm going to do this. It's unsafe. There's too much danger, you know. It's going to ruin my life. The catastrophizing just, you know, it goes through the roof. So I've had to do, as you know, I'm starting to get back into pole now and I'm really enjoying it, but it's taken some serious mental rehab.
It's been a lot since you first came in just to do that one-off training. Like that's even been a long period of time. So it's been something you've been working on a lot to get here. And I have that same fear of re-injury because my body, like the more I understand about it, the more I get nervous about actually getting back into pole training. Right. But like for me, the biggest one that comes to mind for me I've got two and they're all come from falls or injuries. The first one was I was doing caterpillars climbs.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
So very much upside down.
Very much upside down. I lost it and I fell on my head. And that they said to me at the time, like, and I don't know if I've used this as an instructor, but it makes sense. Like, you know, if you're okay, and I was okay, get back up and do it again.
Yep.
Just like, let's just get it while it's there. And it took me, and I mentioned this before, about 18 months to retrain it. Now I have no idea what was my good side and my bad side because I had no idea which side I fell out of. I was just like, I need to get this trick back. And I just worked on it slowly and it was a lot. So many crash mats. But the other one was a ragdoll when I broke my toe.
Oh, yeah, you kicked another pole or something.
I kicked another pole doing a ragdoll. It was like my first...
You and your bloody toes.
My bloody toes, my fingers, poles, my ribs, like everything. But anyway, it was my first Friday night teaching by myself. So it's the first time I was left in the studio as an instructor on my own. And I demonstrated this move and I kicked the pole. And I mean, it wasn't just a little break. It was, they had to straighten it back into place break. It was, I told him it was my foot. I knew it was my toe, but I wanted to get through the hospital like quicker. I'm like, my foot is broken. When you go there with a toe, like people, anyway. Oh my God. So even I went to do a ragdoll the other day and this was like, I broke my toe. It must have been 2017 or 16, maybe. It must have been 15. I started teaching in 2015 and I went to a ragdoll the other day and it stopped me a little bit. So yeah. It definitely takes some time.
Yeah, because the body remembers.
I know. Can it just not?
I think, it's interesting because what we were just talking about before is this idea of a perceived threat that's not really there. So you can kind of work with those facts and those figures around, well, there's no danger, I'm safe, you know, things like that. And you can, that sort of positive self-talk can be really helpful. But when you've experienced the danger, and you know that danger is real, you know, it's really hard to kind of convince yourself I'm safe.
Yeah. So you go from being just anxious about it to being like, I know that this can really happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've experienced it, you know.
And I know it really sucks.
And there is psychology behind the whole get back on the horse.
Yep.
You know, because what you're doing is you are almost retraining your brain instantly to counteract that fear of like, I can't do this. This is unsafe. It's not possible. Because if you fall and you don't get back on, the trauma kicks in, and the longer you avoid doing something, the more we build it up in our minds and the more unsafe it becomes and the more danger we perceive when it is associated with that. So that's why they always say if you can physically get back up and do it straight away because the brain hasn't had time.
So we're not a bad instructor if we encourage this.
No, and it's the same in any sport. Like the term "get back on the horse" literally comes from falling off a horse and getting straight back on if you haven't broken your back or anything like that. And it's because your brain hasn't had enough time to process the trauma yet, so you can get back on and reteach it in that moment that this is safe. I can do this, and you're almost like immediately counteracting that trauma response. But that's not to say that you won't still walk away and
trauma still builds.
Yeah, you know, the anxiety will still be there the next time you come back, or you know, you might experience panic. You know, when you first do that move or whatever. And really, it's just about making sure that you recognize that. And you know, if you have a mental block to the point where it's actually holding you back and you feel like, no, I just can't do that, but it's something that you really want. Like potentially there's just things that you don't want to do anymore. And I think that's the thing that I had to teach myself. I had this all or nothing attitude towards pole, and I was like, if I can't do A, B, and C, then I may as well not even bother. Yep. Where I've come back with the attitude now is like, I don't have to do a headstand, or I don't have to do this or that causes me anxiety. Just come back and do the stuff I feel comfortable with and that brings me joy and gets me back up the pole.
I think that takes time too. Like I know I've had a lot more discussions recently or in like recent times where, you know, we have a curriculum, but it is linear, but it's not perfect for everybody. And it's not suitable for everybody. We do it because in this type of a group fitness environment, it's easy. It's easy to deliver. It's easy to sell.
And there are people who thrive on progression through the levels, but there's also options. And this is what's worked really well for me coming back is I've just avoided levels altogether because I know there are certain tricks in certain levels that I just won't do, like with the point where I'm at right now. Yeah. So I'm just taking non-graded approach to pole, and for me, it's made it much more enjoyable. It's much more relaxed.
Yeah, and I think that it comes down to some of your experiences, and some people don't. I'm also very much an all or nothing type of person, and I've really struggled with that recently. And I've literally just gone back because I dropped in and did a class, and I just can't help myself. I just want to do it all. I know I shouldn't be doing a Gennaro, but I want to know if I can still do a Gennaro, so I do it, and then I can still do it. And I'm like, amazing, I can do a Gennaro. I'm not training regularly enough that I should be doing Gennaros right now. Like I'm not even training strength enough to be able to say that I should be doing that type of movement. But yeah, just because, and I talked about this in the previous episode, just because you can do something doesn't mean your body should be doing it.
Yes.
And obviously then you add your mind into this and it's a whole nother ball game when you've got the fear, because even a fear of injury, and a fear of not missing out. Like I do have girls who come to the studio because they don't want to miss out and then they overtrain their body. So I guess like mental blocks can obviously come up in so many ways.
Absolutely. When you look at the specific listener example, it sounds to me like there's a particular trick that she is being held back from doing. So she obviously associates that fear with that particular trick, or actually maybe she said going upside down in general.
Yeah, she said, and hand over head.
Yeah, hand over head and going upside down.
I fell once when I had my hand above my arm. Cannot read today. I fell once when I had my arm above my head, and now I go into panic mode when I get myself into anything similar. It's really holding me back from progressing. And I mean, you think about it, being upside down, I don't know exactly. Well, I'm assuming she was upside down just because her arm above her head. I don't think she actually states that. Being upside down is scary in general, especially if there's not crash mats. And I'm currently going through the Pole Physio Save Your Shoulder workshop because it expires this weekend. And in true Steph fashion, I've left it to the last minute. So I'm in massive catch-up mode. Every morning I'm like, you have to watch a little bit.
Can I have your notes from that? Because in true Mon fashion, I haven't even signed up yet.
Well, it's not going to be back for 12 more months. Oh, so good. But anyway, she's got a hypermobility one coming too, which I'm interested in because I'm hypermobile. There you go, Simone, just a shameless little plug for your hypermobile workshop. Anyway, they were talking about crash mats, and it's just not normalized in pole. Like, it's like an effort. One, it's an effort to get them out. I know in my studio, I have a total of 35 poles and I have 4 crash mats. Because we use a lot of spotters, though, in all fairness, but crash mats probably need to be a little bit more normalized.
I agree. I always use crash mats now. If I'm trying something I haven't done for a while or anything new, I always use a crash mat. But I've learned from experience. And that's part
and
of
you've
that's
also
been
got an instructor's background as well. And I think that, you know, that little bit more of an awareness and having that little, like, awareness of your own body, I think you learn through being an instructor and teaching yourself things to be able to teach. But you also get to learn from all the experiences of your students.
But I think that's something I lost. I lost that trust in my body. I always used to just trust that my body would catch, or that my body would pull me out of something or figure something out. And to be fair, I actually didn't have a fall. My injuries occurred else, like just through overtraining and all those typical type things. But I did have a headstand issue that like started it all.
Yeah, I know. I was like, you called out headstands.
Yeah, well, I did a headstand in a yoga class and created a bulging disc in my neck, which then caused all these other issues because I kept training through it and blah, 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 blah. Silly stuff.
Sounds a little bit like me with my shoulder back in the day.
Silly stuff. So, even though headstands, when you do them correctly, are, safe, for me, I'm like, danger. Big red lights come flashing on. And I they're just the reason for everything for me, which obviously I'm aware is total catastrophizing and, but it's something that I'm still working through. But part of that, me getting crash mats out every time, is retraining my brain about safety. And telling myself pole is safe and I am safe. And
so how are you retraining that?
It starts from, I guess, the first thing is recognizing and accepting that the fear is there, which I feel like, given that you have received this, she's there. She's at that stage where she's like, there's a real fear here. It's holding me back. This is an issue. So kind of accepting that that's where you're at. For me, I addressed it the same way you would address rehabbing a physical injury.
Yeah.
Okay, I've lost all this strength. I have this injury that I need to work around. I can't necessarily just jump in and do everything that I used to do. What are some things I need to put in place to make sure it's safe?
Yeah.
And just creating as much safety for your brain as possible. So never trying anything new unless you have a spotter, grabbing out crash mats whenever you need to, making sure. And I think the other thing as well is reassessing the danger from the original incident. So was I trying something that was beyond my capabilities? Did I have the strength for it? Did I have a spotter in place? Did I do everything I could to, create safety? Did I have a crash mat? All these things. How can I recreate that event in a safer way, safer environment? Do I need to go back and do some more strength or get some lower level tricks under my belt first before I retry that trick again?
I think another really good one to add to that is if you understand that trick and the regressions of it, and I mean your instructor can help you with this, maybe it's going back to the beginning of where that trick starts and moving yourself through the tricks as well as the strength markers for each of those tricks. And I mean, so many resources exist for us now that can help us understand how mobile we need to be, how strong we need to be. But yeah, having that discussion with your instructor, I think, will also be very helpful.
Yeah. When you look at therapy and like managing phobias and fear and things, we talk about something that's called gradual exposure.
Yeah.
And basically it's taking that, whatever that fear is, and working it. It's basically like goal setting 101. You start with the big thing that you're afraid of and you work back and you create steps or little smaller goals where you can start with and build your way back up to where you were. So if it was a trick where you were upside down with your arm above your head, okay, maybe you're not ready to go upside down yet, but maybe you can do a lot of training with movements where your arm is above your head to retrain your brain to feel safe with your arms above your head, or potentially, you can start going upside down from the ground and just gradually teach your mind and your body that being in this upside down position is safe.
Yeah.
Where you're doing it in a place where you feel safe and it's not eliciting that anxiety. Because what happens when we experience anxiety is as soon as we start to experience those ever familiar bodily experiences, you know, the racing heart, the sweaty palms, the feeling of being overwhelmed, your brain starts to shut down, you can't think properly. All of a sudden, we're not thinking about the actual thing we're doing anymore. We're just thinking about the fear.
Yeah.
And we start to create anxiety about anxiety. And that's where that's a dangerous loop to get sucked in. That's where we start to experience panic and, you know. So in those moments, it's about creating links to where you want to be in a safe environment where those physiological responses aren't taking over.
Yeah.
So you can start to really focus on the skills again. You can start to associate those positions, those bodily positions with safety. And it's all about linking the body and the mind.
Yeah.
And taking away that disconnect, if that makes sense. And it's just a gradual exposure thing. And you don't move on to the next step until you feel totally comfortable in the first one.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might experience that overwhelming anxiety even just at the thought of doing it, you know. So even, you know, when you look at, you know, in therapy, if I'm working with someone who has a fear of spiders, if they can't even be in the same room as a spider, we'll start with photos.
Oh,
you know, and just exposing them to the pictures and the visual images of whatever it is they're working towards. And you could do that, you know, because
you could do that with videos of the trick that I guess that you fell out of. It's like watching it, and I assume by watching it, you're analyzing it. Like you can, with a trick anyway, you're analyzing the movement. So you might even find yourself more familiar with that particular movement.
Yeah. And I think it's also about being really open with your instructors, and I guess it comes down to that acceptance of where you're at as well. Like, don't push yourself to be further along than you are. Same as with a physical injury. Like, don't compare yourself to who you used to be. I used to be able to do this trick.
Oh my God, this is so hard.
Or like putting yourself down and being like, why can't you just do it? You know, a 10-year-old could do this, or, you know, all that self-deprecation.
10-year-old.
You know,
we had just started a kids class at the studio, and the mums, they're all mums from the studio, are bringing their kids in, and they just like their inverts this week. They're like week 6. I mean, they're kids. They're crazy. And one of the mums is like, he can already do his inverts and he can already do his Superman. And I'm just like, are we going to have to ban you from coming here so we can just let him do his inverts?
Poor kid.
Oh, she was like,
my 2.5-year-old
so jealous.
more flexibility than I could ever wish to have in my life. Like, it's just, I'm looking at it like, oh, you're going to be such a great pole dancer.
But, I've already told Ross, I'm like, they're going to be pole dancers or CrossFitters. I don't know. But.
Yeah, and just be like having compassion for yourself. Like some days you might be feeling brave. Other days you might need a little bit more encouragement, a little bit more positive self-talk. And there's things that you can do. I guess there's tools that you can arm yourself to combat. You know, there's thoughts, feelings, behavioral type things that we can do to really kind of help ourselves through this type of thing. So creating like safe, positive talk for yourself, like I'm safe, I can do this, there's no danger.
I just want to quickly add to that one. I listened to Mel Robbins. If you listen to Mel Robbins, which one is it? The High Five Habit?
No.
Oh, recommend. I think you'll love it. But one of the things she talks about in there is feeling safe. And I've used this a lot just with my general anxiety, but telling yourself like, I am safe, I am loved, I am okay. Like repeating that over. And surprisingly, it's probably the focusing. I don't know. This is your degree, not mine. So I'm like, but like, I am safe, I am okay, I am loved. And I've had a few like really anxious moments where I've had to repeat that to myself. And yeah, it worked for me. It worked wonders. I mean, when you're upside down, it could be, I don't know if the love thing helps. I know that helps with like anxiety from a personal perspective. I don't know if it's going to help you with pole, but like just like I'm safe, I'm okay.
Yeah, you're breaking that cycle. So you're stopping the cycle of anxiety turning into anxiety. Because if you don't pull yourself out of it, you just keep focusing on those anxious thoughts. Your anxiety keeps telling you you're unsafe. You keep catastrophizing, and you work yourself up.
Yep.
And when you can recognize that process and label it, like this is anxiety, all of a sudden it's not, this trick is unsafe, I'm unsafe. It's, oh, my anxiety's here.
Yeah.
I recognize this and I can manage this. Anxiety you can manage, right? So you can put things into place to calm the body. You know, there's breathing exercises, there's relaxation exercises, there's making sure that, you know, even simple things like don't wear the pole pants that ride up your bum and make you irritable and cause you to stress. Wear things that make you feel comfortable, that are going to relax the body, that you feel safe in. and just doing everything you can. Like maybe you go and get a massage that morning to make sure you're in a relaxed headspace, make sure you had a good night's sleep the night before. All those things are going to put your body into a nice, safe, relaxed state as well. So you're managing the mind, the body, and the emotional state all at the same time.
Yeah.
And like I said, just gradually expose yourself to little bits and pieces and create that safety around that trick and that whatever it is that mental block is.
Yeah.
If you get to a point where you push yourself too far, you just dial it back to the next step again until you feel ready. And it's just what you're doing is you're actually retraining the neural pathways in your brain.
Yeah.
So it's a repetition process.
And I think about it, taking it away from the fear element and thinking about it when you first learn a trick. And I say this all the time to my students is like, we're here, like, especially newbies, because newbies can be very hard on themselves when they don't get something. It's like, you've never done this before. We have to build that neurological pathway for you to understand the coordination, the pull of the arm, the momentum of the spin. Like I'm using a spin as an example here. Like there is a lot there that you have to understand and you have to build those pathways. And the more you do it, the more those pathways build, right? So it is probably like learning a new trick in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you feel the more you do something, the more comfortable you feel in that space.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the same concept as like, you know, if you learnt pole on a static pole and then introduce spin at a later date, you're always going to prefer static over spin because that's what you've been doing for a long period of time. That's what you know. That's what you identify as comfortable, safe. I know this. It feels good to me. Yeah. And opposite, most people you chat to, if they first learned on spin, that's their jam. That's what they like to do. That's where they feel most comfortable. Static, they're like, oh.
You know, the other thing comes to mind is all us pole dancers who started pole dancing very long ago and all trained on one side to begin with. And then all these studios have now turned to both sides, which rightfully so. And training that offside or the drunk side, or that we try not to use bad side because it has a negative connotation to it. But training all those sides again is really hard and you feel really comfortable. So you're going to default to those things when you want to default to them. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's also recognizing as well, like if you go back to that initial safety of how safe were you actually trying that trick to start with, there may be tricks that you are safe to try on your good side, but your negative, I don't know. I don't want to use bad side now.
Just use offside.
Your offside, you're actually not safe to try it on that side yet.
Yeah.
So understanding that as well, it's not necessarily that you can't or won't train your offside, but potentially you're not there yet on your offside, and recognizing, you know, and understanding what your body is ready for comes into that safety aspect of it as well. Because like there is legit fear associated with doing an elite sport, which is what pole is. You know, you're putting your body into weird positions that it's never done before. You're doing things from a height. There is a high risk of fall, even though a lot of injuries actually don't come from falls. They come from overtraining and
all the other things we get excited about.
Stuff. So
you also have to have, like, the pole needs to be warm enough. Your skin needs to be warm enough. It can't be too sweaty. Like there are just so many elements that require us to be able to pole. And I think we kind of take that for granted because we're like, oh, we just go in and pole. But when you think about it, you need a lot of things to line up to be able to pole safely.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think it's just the first step is recognizing that there is a fear aspect there and then knowing some tips and tricks and tools to manage that fear. That is if that trick is a goal for you to get back to. It doesn't have to be, or it doesn't have to be right now. Like, you know, I think sometimes when we experience a trauma associated with a certain trick, we tend to hyper-focus on that trick as being really important, whereas potentially there's a whole lot of other things you can do if you're not ready yet.
And I think if, like, the first thing that comes to mind is if for this particular student or pole dancer, if it's a part of their grading syllabus or their curriculum, that it might really be slowing them down because they need that to move on. It's okay, providing your studio offers some alternatives. It's okay not to do a curriculum. It doesn't make you any better or any worse of a pole dancer. It is just a structure, and your structure, it's just a structure that exists. You can create your own structures. You can work through privates.
That's probably a good one to go with, actually. If there is a specific trick that you are really hell-bent on getting back to, or it's really holding up your progress. For example, I had a student who had a fear she fell out of a brass monkey once, and but it was in a combo that she wanted to learn. So she had to feel comfortable in it. And so we worked on different entries into Brass Monkey to find out which one felt more comfortable. We worked on all like back of knee, like hook tricks, like all those sorts of things. And now she can do them like in her sleep. But booking in for a private with an instructor that you can really break down that fear with and set some of those smaller goals and work on that exposure with in and around other things that build your confidence, make you feel happy on the pole. You know, it's really important as well not to just focus on that one trick. Build that into your training regime and also include things that you can do really easily that make you feel confident on the pole, that reteach you that pole is safe.
And pole is fun, and pole is whatever that purpose is that I think you signed up for it.
Yeah, but I've had instructors who, like, even coming back this time round, I went into Kat's mums and bubs class, and Kat is very well versed in everything I've been through with my injuries and just, I guess, how much fear I had associated with it. And she was really great. You know, she pushed me, but she didn't push me too hard. She respected when I said, no, I'm not ready. And she gave me different entries and different breakdowns into things where I was like, oh, I did not feel comfortable inverting again. Not because my body wasn't capable, because I just remembered that fear of that pain in my back when I went into an invert. And she was like, have you tried, you know, dropping down into it from this new combo? And I was like, oh, I haven't. And I did it. And I was like, oh, I actually felt very strong and comfortable in an invert position. I just was too afraid to go back into that entry upside down, you know. And now
from that traditional sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and now, you know, I'm feeling really comfortable again. So it's about, I guess, talking to the right people and working with instructors, I guess, that can help you break through that and look at things from different angles as well. So I think, like, particularly if there's a specific trick you're trying to get back to, booking some privates would be super helpful. And I think would really, I guess, make that process quicker.
Yeah. And yeah, like in a group setting, there's only so much. We were having this conversation in the studio yesterday. Most of your classes are group fitness classes. These, while we try our best to be tailored, they're never going to be super tailored to you and your needs, because you also, as an instructor, competing with, you know, up to, depending how big your studio is, some of our classes can have up to 15 people in them, and trying to give everybody attention in that can be quite challenging. So if you're just doing your normal level classes and you're not progressing and you're getting frustrated, the instructor unfortunately just can't give you that much detail. That maybe they probably have the skills to do so and they're more than happy to, but in that setting, you're not the only person in the class.
Well, the class isn't tailored to you either.
No.
You know, if you go to do a private, they can tailor that private to work on the tricks and the entries and the combos that you really are working on.
And it can be at your pace. If you're like, yep, look, today is not the day that I want to try putting my hand over my head in an upside down position. It's like, cool, well, let's just try getting upside down to start off with. And
sometimes it's as well, it really helps to have a professional tell you it's okay. I remember when I was coming back after my shoulder injuries, I was like, no, I'm going to break my shoulder again. And I had to go, and like my physio literally had to be like, you can do this.
Yeah.
Medically, there's nothing wrong. You are fine. Here's your scans. You know, there's nothing going on. Everything's okay. And then, you know, going in and working with your instructor and having them reiterate to you, yep, your form looks good. Yeah, really, you know, you're looking strong. I think you can do this. Can really help just build that confidence back up again as well.
Yeah, and there's no shame in bringing this conversation, this type of a topic up with a therapist or somebody that you might be working with on your mental health, because fear is a part of that realm.
Yeah.
Is that the right word? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, fear is anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it might just take time, and it might just be breaking down what happened, and they can talk you through it. And yeah, as well as your instructor, feel free to share with your instructor, especially if you're doing private lessons, how much it can help.
And share with your fellow polars too, because
you're not alone.
Yeah, sometimes it's really helpful to understand, like, oh, you went through that and you came out the other end and you're really safe. Oh, maybe I can too.
Yeah.
You know, or sometimes, you know, honestly, just a problem shared is a problem halved. Like, sounds like a cliche, but it's so true. Like, if you are holding everything in and no one knows what's going on for you, you're actually creating an unsafe environment for yourself, because you are putting yourself in a position where you're going to feel pressure to perform alongside everyone else, and no one has any kind of understanding of what's going on for you. So it's very isolating. You feel very alone, and you feel very like there's no understanding, or there's no kind of tailoring or adjusting or anything like that. So you're going to have a lot more fear going into that situation as well.
Yeah, and I think the other thing we can really suck at, I'm going to use that word, is just comparing ourselves to the other people in the room.
Or who we used to be.
Or you just hit me like, I literally felt that one in my chest. I've literally got to be like, it's been 5 years since I was at, 2017 was when I injured my ribs, and I was super strong, super fit.
I remember watching you. I just have this memory of you doing like this shoulder mounts, like in this big circle, just continuously. And I was like, holy shit, this girl is so strong.
Not so strong anymore. But it's really hard, and it's only taken me to like now to be like, you know what? I don't have the time to get back to where I was. Like the energy and the amount of time I put into training towards that at that point, it's just something I don't have. So I have to train smarter.
Yeah.
And at the time I was just training. I was just like, I was going to be on the pole all the time. I was here like 5 days. I was overtraining.
I was too. Yeah. Like, because I was teaching as well. And that's something I have to remind myself now, because I have no intentions of going back to teaching. The pressure would just be way too high for me. And I just don't have the time anymore. But I have to remind myself that I was teaching 3 nights a week for 3 or 4 hours sometimes. And half of those classes were flexi classes. Half of them were strength based. There was a lot of like unplanned conditioning and training that was going on top of my own training. Yeah. I'm never going to, it's really unfair for me to expect myself to be at that level again. I agree. And it's funny, I don't find myself comparing myself to other people that were at my level who have progressed, because in my mind, like, that makes sense. I haven't trained for 2 years. They've kept training. Of course, they're at a higher level for me. That doesn't really bother me. What I have found really interestingly triggering is students that I taught as beginners who are now well and truly way more advanced than me. Because there's this little part of my head that's like, no. Cannot compute. Obviously, it makes sense.
How does this work? It's like my sister just having a baby, and she's my baby sister. She's 5 years younger than me. I'm like, how do you have it? She's 28 in all fairness, but like, how do you have a baby? Like, why is this a thing? Like, I'm really struggling to compute that my little sister, who was an absolute menace growing up, is now about like really struggling. But anyway, yes, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that was funny. I had the same thing when my brother turned 30. I was like, what? Like, he's only 3 years younger than me, but in my brain, he's still 10. Yeah. And I'm just like, it just doesn't make sense that he has a job, he has kids. I'm like, no, mate.
How did this happen?
No, he's still my baby brother. Oh. It's a little bit like that, I guess, with students too, because I'm still like, no, but you're still my baby students.
Yeah, like, you still have this connection to them where it's like you were, I guess, in a position of like being the one with the knowledge and the teaching. And I assume teachers, when their kids get older, like their grade 1ers are like 17, it's the same thing to be like, how'd you go from here to there? But
well, it's actually a really interesting thing, because a lot of parents experience this as well, where because obviously your whole life you are you're guiding your kids, you're giving them advice, you're in charge of turning them into a functioning human being. And they come to you, kids grow up idolizing their parents, they look to them, their parents know all. Parents can make no mistakes. What their parents say is just like, and there is a point when you come into adulthood where you actually surpass your parents. Yeah. Either your knowledge of a certain topic puts you in like a, or you have progressed more in regards to political correctness, or you just have wisened up because you've had different experiences to them, or you've seen things from a different perspective. And all of a sudden you kind of cross that barrier. And it can be a real turning point for parents and kids, depending on how they manage that. Whether parents are kind of take the role of like, I'm so proud of you, you are now a reflection of all the good work I put into you, and I want to continue to see you. Or whether they kind of fight that process and they want to keep that control and that level of like
authority
almost. And I don't want to, drop down off that idolization kind of
Yeah.
pedestal. So it's a really interesting phenomenon. It happens kind of across all.
Well, yeah. And I think, I know sometimes instructors will be like, oh, but this person's now in my class and they're actually better than me. I can't teach them anything. It's like, yes, you can.
Yes,
like,
you can. Yeah.
You can teach them something. So, yeah, it's crazy. We kind of got a little bit off topic there.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
Sorry, guys. So
it all kind of plays into, I guess,
does.
the fear of losing control, the fear of letting go, the fear of the unknown. It all kind of plays into it. And I think it's just about recognizing and self-reflecting, recognizing what is it that's going on for me in this moment and how can I use that information to set some goals and use some tools or seek out some new tools and, start making baby steps towards where I want to go.
Yeah, I love it. Is there anything else you want to share on the fear topic?
There's actually, if you go onto Spotify and you type in like managing fear or the fear of failure or the fear of specific things, there is so much information out there in the podcast world. I was just telling you before that I happened upon a podcast called The Psychology Behind, and it tackles a lot of this sort of stuff, and specifically like specific phobias like fear of flying and things like that. So it's a really interesting one if anyone wants to learn a little bit more or yeah.
Amazing. Well, Mon, thank you for coming on to uncover another really good topic. I'm sure we'll have you back again.
I love it. I love coming back.
So guys, if you really enjoyed this episode, take a screenshot and share it and tag Mon and I in it, because we would love to know what your key takeaways were, what really resonated with you. And if you are experiencing fear, feel free to share it with us. Slide into the DMs. We would love to hear more. I don't know if love to hear more about your fear is a really good sentence. But one thing I really want to just communicate is you're probably not alone. Mon and I as two people have had two very different experiences to fear and pole. So it definitely
It'd be interesting to see what the patterns are. Like, what are the biggest mind blocks that people are experiencing when it comes to pole? Because I reckon you'd find there'd be patterns of specific tricks or specific things that people have come across that create these mind blocks. And yeah, sharing is caring.
Yeah, we would love to hear it. Anyway, come follow us on Instagram at uncover.pd. I will pop all Mon's details in the show notes, so feel free to go along and follow her. And go back and listen to episode 62 about pole identity and 38 about clicks. They are really good episodes, so I highly recommend it. Anyway, until next time, we'll see you soon.
Bye.